If an avoidant does this, they're not avoiding you, they're in love. What if everything you interpreted as rejection was actually the deepest form of love an avoidant person knows how to give? The signs you've been missing could change everything you think you know about how they truly feel. They create consistent micro-connections instead of grand gestures. When avoidant individuals fall in love, they abandon their typical pattern of emotional extremes and begin weaving subtle threads of connection throughout daily interactions. Their love manifests not in passionate declarations or overwhelming displays of affection, but in the quiet consistency of small, meaningful gestures that require no reciprocation or acknowledgement. They begin remembering tiny details about their partner's preferences, quietly adjusting their environment to create comfort, and showing up in reliable, understated ways that feel safe to their nervous system. Their brain has learned that grand romantic gestures often lead to expectations they cannot meet, so instead, they invest their emotional energy in sustainable acts of care that don't trigger their flight response. These micro-connections become their love language, a way of saying, "I see you, I value you," without the vulnerability that traditional romantic expressions demand. They might consistently make their partner's favorite coffee without being asked, or automatically save the last piece of something their partner enjoys, creating a foundation of thoughtful consideration that speaks louder than words ever could. The avoidant mind interprets these small acts as manageable doses of intimacy that don't threaten their autonomy or trigger their abandonment fears. Each micro-connection becomes a building block in a relationship structure that feels sustainable rather than overwhelming. They're essentially creating a love that feels safe to maintain, one that doesn't require them to fundamentally alter their protective mechanisms or expose themselves to the terror of complete emotional vulnerability. Their nervous system begins seeking your presence rather than avoiding it. The most profound shift occurs when an avoidant person's body begins craving proximity to their partner rather than distance. Their autonomic nervous system, which has spent years in hypervigilant protection mode, starts to associate their partner's presence with regulation and calm rather than threat and overwhelm. This biological transformation represents a fundamental rewiring of their attachment circuitry, indicating that their deepest survival mechanisms have begun to recognize this person as safe. Their body language subtly changes, becoming more relaxed and open when their partner is near. They might unconsciously mirror their partner's movements, synchronize their breathing patterns, or position themselves within closer physical proximity without conscious awareness. Their nervous system begins to co-regulate with their partner's energy, creating moments of genuine peace that they've rarely experienced in relationships. This physiological shift indicates that their primitive brain has reclassified this person from potential threat to secure base. The avoidant individual might find themselves naturally gravitating towards spaces where their partner spends time, not out of conscious decision, but because their nervous system has learned to associate those environments with safety and regulation. They begin tolerating and even seeking physical closeness during vulnerable moments like illness or stress, when their defenses are naturally lowered and their need for comfort overrides their fear of dependency. They start sharing their internal world in microscopic increments. When avoidant individuals fall in love, they begin the terrifying process of gradually revealing their inner landscape, though in ways so subtle that partners often miss these profound offerings of trust. They might share a fleeting thought about their childhood, mention a fear they've never voiced aloud, or express a preference they've kept hidden for years. These moments of self-disclosure feel monumentally vulnerable to them, representing cracks in the fortress they've spent decades constructing. Their sharing often comes disguised as casual observations or practical information, making it easy for partners to overlook the significance of what's being revealed. They might mention feeling overwhelmed at work while simultaneously revealing their deep fear of failure, or share a memory from childhood that contains layers of unspoken pain and longing. Each revelation represents a conscious choice to risk being seen, despite their terror of judgment or rejection. The avoidant mind carefully rations these moments of openness, testing their partner's response before deciding whether to share more. They become exquisitely attuned to signs of judgment, overwhelm, or emotional demands following their disclosures, ready to retreat back into protective silence if their vulnerability isn't received with gentle acceptance. These incremental revelations become their way of building intimacy at a pace that doesn't trigger their flight response or activate their fears of engulfment. They begin tolerating conflict without disappearing. Perhaps the most significant indicator of an avoidant person's love is their willingness to remain present during emotional turbulence rather than fleeing into their familiar patterns of withdrawal and stonewalling. Their nervous system, which typically interprets any emotional intensity as danger requiring immediate escape, begins developing tolerance for the discomfort that accompanies genuine intimacy and authentic communication. Instead of shutting down or creating distance at the first sign of conflict, they make conscious efforts to stay engaged, even when every fiber of their being screams for retreat. This represents a massive override of their survival programming, indicating that their attachment to this person has become stronger than their need for emotional safety. They might not engage perfectly or with the emotional availability their partner desires, but their physical and mental presence during difficulty signals a profound shift in their relational priorities. Their love manifests in their willingness to sit with the anxiety that accompanies emotional conversations, to resist their impulse to minimize or dismiss their partner's feelings, and to remain curious about resolution rather than focusing solely on escape. They begin recognizing that temporary discomfort during conflict might be preferable to the lasting pain of disconnection, representing a fundamental rewiring of their approach to relational challenges. They allow you into their sacred spaces and routines. Avoidant individuals guard their personal space and routines with fierce protectiveness, viewing any intrusion as a threat to their autonomy and emotional regulation. When they fall in love, they begin making room, both literally and metaphorically, for their partner to exist within the structured environments that help them feel safe and controlled. This integration represents one of their most profound expressions of trust and commitment. They might invite their partner to join them in activities they've always performed alone, share spaces in their home that have previously been off-limits, or adjust their carefully constructed routines to accommodate their partner's needs and preferences. Each accommodation represents a conscious choice to prioritize connection over complete autonomy, indicating that their attachment has become strong enough to override their need for total control. Their love expresses itself through the gradual blending of their independent existence with their partner's presence, creating new routines and spaces that honor both their need for autonomy and their growing desire for togetherness. They begin viewing their partner not as an intruder in their carefully ordered world, but as someone worthy of inclusion in the spaces and rituals that define their sense of self and safety. This integration happens slowly and deliberately, with each invitation representing a significant leap of faith and trust.